And welcome, Hoosier Nation, to our 116th show of the Hoosier Sound, where we are the official podcast of Indiana HQ. We are recording this edition of the Hoosier Sound on Tuesday evening, November 19th, 2019, where I am your host, Noah Freeman. On the docket for tonight, it was a busy yet pretty good weekend for the most part for IU athletics. We're going to talk about a very close game that the football team had against Penn State. Then we're going to go into later that same day. The men's basketball team took on Troy and looked like their best selves as of yet this season in their first 4 games. And we're going to talk a little bit about there was some really cool news that happened on Sunday, and then we will get into a preview for arguably the biggest game for Indiana football coming up this Saturday against Michigan. Here with me tonight, it's Matt, and then we've got one of our HQ contributors. You've heard him before. Andrew Root is on as well. So, Andrew, it's been a couple weeks since you've been on. How are you doing this evening?
Noah, Matt, I'm doing great. It's been a while since I've been on. IU basketball's been playing about every Tuesday night lately, so it's nice to have a breather from that and join the pod.
Yeah. Matt, how are you doing after it's been you and me for a few weeks now in a row.
Yeah,
it's
nice
been pretty
stretch.
consistent. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's been good. It's nice and sunny down here and 70 degrees, and
That's true.
it's your daily or your weekly update on Florida weather. And no, but like honestly, I really do miss the cold and the fall weather in Bloomington. When I walk out of my house and I start sweating every day, I go, I could be wearing a sweatshirt and be walking around a beautiful campus in Bloomington, Indiana. So don't graduate.
I probably shouldn't ask you every week how you're doing, because you're just gonna say how it's 70 degrees out, and everyone's gonna
nice.
be like, even though you wish it was winter, everyone's still like, what I would give for a day or a weekend for just that 70-degree weather.
Come on down. The women's team will be down here on a Friday night playing.
That's true. So. And then fingers crossed, maybe the end of December, early January, the football team might be on down there.
Bowl game would be nice.
It would be really nice in Florida.
Jacksonville. Yeah,
tough one.
But speaking of football, let's go into the most recent game that Indiana had this past weekend. So Indiana traveled to Penn State, as did Andrew and Nathan. So we'll actually get the on-site experience from both Andrew and maybe Nathan to see what his thoughts were next week. But
yeah.
Of course, the Hoosiers fell 34-27, a one-score game by the end of it, which people predicted Vegas predicted that it would be over a 2-score game. Indiana made it to a 1-score game. But let's get our opening thoughts from one of the two HQ men on the ground. How was Penn State, first of all, Andrew? Because that's a place I would really want to go see. Just the football atmosphere during the game, before the game, all of it. How was your weekend in Happy Valley?
The weekend itself, the game itself was honestly one of the best experiences I've ever had. Attending a football game, the atmosphere is electric. Right from warm-ups, their crowd is filing in. Actually, one of their fans was talking to me, getting to know like what I did, whatnot. So kind of a friendly atmosphere as well.
That's cool.
That was really neat to see. And then 106,000 fans or so is what the total attendance amounted up being. And to play against Indiana, not a powerhouse program, but a kind of respectable program this season. That's really interesting to see that they have to sell out basically for every game that they have. Now, I wish it would have been a whiteout, because that's on my bucket list to go to a Penn State whiteout game.
Yeah.
But I'll have to settle for this game for now.
That's true. Yeah. All right, Matt, let's get your opening thoughts on the game itself. I have a few first things that we're going to cover in a second, but let me get your overall thoughts. How did Indiana play? Did they live up to expectations? I know you predicted a few months ago that Indiana was going to go into Happy Valley and win, which they almost did. You amended that prediction somewhat last week, and you thought that the Hoosiers were not going to pull away with it, but were you happy with the on-field performance that Indiana had?
I saw a lot of people on Twitter who were upset with a couple of the play calls and or execution of the play calls. I know the fake punt being maybe number one on that list part of from execution. And
we'll get to that.
WAP muffing a punt or muffing a punt, matrixing a punt to the point that they can't even tell if they got it right or not. But I saw a lot of people online who were upset about it, and I think that's a good thing, actually, because it shows us how much this program has grown under Tom Allen. that we actually have people who wouldn't normally pay attention to the football program in depth, upset about calls on Twitter. The program has grown. And so that's my thought on the game, is that this program has gone from, this is a place where we lose every single time, right? And we're going to go to Penn State and we'll keep it close in the first quarter, and then we'll get blown out in the second quarter, and we'll just put out our second string for the second half. And that's how it's been for probably 10 years now. And we go into this game, and we had a 14-point deficit in the fourth quarter, and we looked like the team that was the aggressors. We were coming back. We are pressing them. They had to go on a 9-minute drive to close, and where they had to do almost everything they possibly could to stay on the field. And it was just unfortunate that we couldn't pull it out. But I thought it was a great performance, and we lost Whop Fillier, had a third the way through the game, probably our best player on the field. We lost him a third through the game and still came up just short to a wonderful Penn State team.
Let's get into a little more of the specifics then.
Sure.
And let's get this first and foremost out of the way. Two things that kind of go into each other. First, let's talk about the refs. Let's get that out of the way, and let's just talk about the refs, because they did factor into the game, and there is a certain point to where it will actually affect the play on the field, which it did. Now, first and foremost, a lot of those, let's say, debatable calls happened in the first half. There were more than enough opportunities for Indiana to come back in the second half and for them to win, regardless of what happened in the first half. So that's first and foremost. That was not the sole reason that Indiana ended up losing their game. They were still, if they were able to, they could have still won. It wasn't like there was a call at the very end of the game that made them lose right at the very end, like a Saints game at the end of the NFL season last year. We did not have a situation like that, but nevertheless, it did definitely result, probably, I would think, in at least a few points going towards Penn State's way, because the very first drive, Indiana wins the coin toss, and it was a question for, especially against Penn State, should they receive or should they kick off? Should they get the ball first so that they can try and score, and then they can get points on the board? Because coming back against Penn State is something they do all the time, and something they never win, because they are 1-21 against Penn State, and the only time that they've won was 2013. So Tom Allen goes with his defense. He says, all right, let's kick it off and let's have the defense go. And the defense, it was a 3-and-out too, wasn't it? Wasn't it not even just a stop? It was a 3-and-out that the defense got. The very first opening possession for Penn State. Then, now you could talk about this being a bad call, but you can't dispute that Whop Fillier, being the guy that he should be, should definitely not have been anywhere near the ball. You've got a punt, not even a kickoff, a punt, where the ball goes straight up in the air and straight back down. You see it bouncing on the ground. Football, when it's bouncing like that, you literally have no idea where it could go. So that's why receivers / whoever's receiving the ball will go 5-10 yards at least away from it, because you have no idea where it can bounce. Literally, it'll turn on a dime. So that was his fault for not getting back from that. And then the refs, I don't think, from calling it that it was, and I could see from on the field that the ref should have called it that he touched it, and then Penn State recovered it. And then in the video replay, you saw the ball. It didn't really change direction, but I don't know if it was enough evidence to overturn it. But nevertheless, again, it resulted in some Penn State points.
Yep.
Then you keep going later down. I wrote all of this down. This is how upsetting it was at points. You go later down. There was a pass interference call a couple drives later to give to Penn State, which then and all of these were on third. Most of these were on third down, by the way, where Indiana's defense was able to actually stop the offense. There was a pass interference call on third down, which resulted in Penn State having a field goal. Which, by the way, this was the call that the back judge threw that pass interference call. It was a judge 2 yards from him staring straight at him, and he didn't throw the flag. And then the guy 15 yards behind him. Now, I love, someone tweeted this. There was a guy from Pittsburgh throwing that flag, and they ended up throwing that pass interference call. So there's two. Then I don't know if you noticed this. It did end up as a touchdown for Indiana, but you never know. It could have resulted in something not good for Indiana. But they were driving down the field, and again, they scored. But I don't know if you noticed, there was a point where the refs actually stopped Indiana from running a play so Penn State could change their players. If Indiana wants to run the ball, the refs don't have to hold the football there for the players to change. If Indiana wants to run a hurry up offense, it's not like, hey, all right, Penn State, you get 20 seconds so that people can run on and run off the field. But that's what they did. They held the Penn State players there. Indiana was ready to go. Peyton Ramsey was literally trying to hurry the ref and plead his case. Hey, I want to run a play before they can actually get on the field. And it's like, oh my goodness, all of these things just starting to add up and add up. Then the fumble that they said wasn't recovered by IU. Now, I've seen some debatable comments on Twitter that, I don't think that Juwan Burgess touched, or he didn't think Juwan Burgess would have got it. But I don't think, and this is again to the indisputable evidence, that I don't think you can't say that Juwan didn't have his hands on it first before other people started to come in. And just all of these calls that kept going against IU, and it's like you just think that the world's against you. And how could it not, especially if you're on the field? Then you've got a holding on number 73 on Penn State on the running touchdown by Clifford that made it 17-14 Penn State. You could argue that all 17 points came by bad calls. Then again, the holding was farther away, but again, you never know. It was a long run. You never know if Indiana was going to make him slow down and start going back, and then this guy would have tackled him. So a very, very blatant missed call there. Then there was an offsides when Penn State moved first at the beginning of the second quarter. Again, we're still in the second quarter, and I've been talking for about 3 or 4 minutes. The missed holding on the strip and fumble recovery. Then we get to the play that... This is what Matt was talking about that had national players and media talking about this play, the targeting that was not targeting. And there is no way, first of all, maybe if you want to go to video review and say it wasn't targeting, I think we'd be upset. But hey, they threw a flag. They said they were going to review it, yada, yada, yada. There wasn't even a flag. You saw his head go from straight forward to on the side with his neck turned over after which people say he didn't hit it with the crown of his helmet. That part honestly doesn't matter. His head was down. He was hitting him
with his head.
He's leading with his head, and he hit him, and of course Wop, his literally his neck went all the way to the side, and they didn't even throw a flag for unsportsmanlike conduct. And then Tom Allen called a timeout. And you want to talk about Tom Allen's timeout usage, we can talk about it in the second half. But he had to call a timeout here so the refs would think a little longer if they wanted to review this. Think about that. A coach had to call a timeout because remember, in college, you can't really throw a challenge flag. And even in the NFL, that wasn't really be a challenge place. But he called a timeout literally so these refs would try and think whether to review this for targeting, because you never know. Losing a defensive back could have come to bite Penn State in the butt later. Nothing. No review, no nothing, literally not even a sniff of anything, which just at that point, especially for the way Indiana was able to keep powering through, and they were able to keep scoring points and stay within scoring distance of Penn State the entire time. Honestly, props to them. After just getting just gut punched every single time, they were only down 20-14 at the half, and that was pretty impressive. So, yeah. After that very long monologue that we have since taken away Matt's memorable monologue, let's go to Andrew we do have to mention these. And again, like I said, it wasn't the end all be all. This was not the reason Indiana ended up losing, but someone being at the game themselves. Of course, the Penn State fans are not necessarily going to argue with all of the calls that are for them, but how did you feel seeing it in person? Was it something that you didn't see all of these calls right away, or were some of these so obvious that no matter where you were in the stadium or the press box that you could see these refs were dropping a few calls per se?
So I was actually on the field doing photography for the website, so I was seesee basically everything through the camera lens. There were a few times I didn't take pictures, trying to see the game by itself. A lot of the calls could have gone either way. The fumble, Wop's fumble on the punt, I couldn't really see much. I tried to look at the video board, couldn't get a clear view. And on that call, I believe they said call stands. So if they say the call stands, that really means that they didn't have the indisputable evidence to confirm the call. On the targeting, I didn't see that one up close on the field. I was on the opposite side. I think it was our end zone that IU was going to. I was at that end, so I didn't get to see that. But seeing the replay, was very, very shocked by it that they didn't check, or they didn't come up with the flag. And the timeout, like you said, took the timeout. Very smart by him to call that timeout, get them to go review it, and then there was nothing on it. And especially seeing one of the Twitter people out there made a close-up video of it and make it look really close to targeting. So I was really shocked by that. But in the end, you can't blame the game on officiating. IU had a chance to get an onside kick to go down and win the game. So all in all, it was just a disappointing performance, or a disappointing end to the game, for a hard-fought game that IU played.
Yep, totally agree. So let's get into some of those reasons that Indiana wasn't able to pull out a win, which, like Matt said, to their credit, they still battled, and we have never really seen an IU team battle back from behind, at least in football, and it was really cool to see that they were down whatever that was, 27-14. They were down 2 possessions, and they were able to keep battling back no matter what and make it a game all the way down to the last second. But a couple of those things in the second half, since the calls started to even out a little bit in the second half. Well, really, they didn't start to even out. They kind of just stopped calling a game. And someone else also on Twitter, I forget who this was. I can't give them any to give them credit for. It was something along the lines of, it's like it's amazing that this day and age you can go to a Penn State game and watch Penn State play so flawlessly that they only had 1 penalty for 0 yards the entire game. It's like, all right, that's when you start to question just a little bit that Penn State played so good that they only had 1 penalty for 0 yards. But some of those on the field things that Indiana could have fixed themselves. Let's start talking a little bit about that. The muffed punt per se. And if you didn't remember anything that, or if you didn't hear basically Tom Allen's reasoning, our freshman long snapper, he was one of the best recruited long snappers in the nation coming this year. But again, he's a freshman. I don't know. You can put this, you can blame this on a lot of people, especially the coaches, for taking a timeout there, to not necessarily knowing what they're going to do. Maybe they wanted to get a look at Penn State's defense, which that's what I thought, so that they could run an actual play on 4th and 1 to go for it, which I wouldn't have minded. But that wasn't how it turned out. It turned out to be a weird lineup to where the ball, Peyton Hendershot, well, Tom Allen said that Peyton Hendershot, the ball wasn't supposed to be snapped to him. That's why you saw him bobble it, because he was like, oh, the ball's right in front of me. And it was a disaster. So, Matt, was your thought originally, why are the coaches so stupid, or were you trying to think of some ulterior motive of what the coaches were trying to do, and how do you think that ended up changing the outcome of the game? Because that was the first huge mistake that Indiana made that ended up not having Indiana's favor at the very end when the final score went down to 0s.
Well, the first thing I thought of was, since when is Chuck Pagano on the Indiana payroll?
I was waiting for somebody to say something about that Colts game. Oh, bad memories. Bad.
I don't think you were the only one that thought that, Matt.
No, there was a lot of people who thought that. But I was sitting there, I was just like, really? This game? Really? The one game we're like, okay, we're on national television, ABC, 12 o'clock slot. Like, we're going to really do that? Like, okay. But then I was like, the second thought was like, oh, that had to be a mistake by the long snapper, because then you watch the replay and you see Peyton Hendershot go, oh my God, I have the ball. And then go, this is not what was supposed to happen. So I just really feel bad. Like, I was a freshman mistake, like a freshman long snapper is going to do that. And it just happened to happen on a really weird play in a nationally televised game. And he'll learn from that and he'll grow from it and probably ask to like make sure, like, hey, we're actually doing this right next time before we leave the huddle. But yeah, so like, I just feel bad. And there's a couple other like executions that just went wrong during this game. And that's going to happen when you play Penn State, right? You're on the road in a hostile environment, in a top 5 environment in the country against a top 10 team in the country. Like, it's just bound to happen. And you just got to live with it. You got to overcome it. And it's just unfortunate that it happened to him.
And again, this was so I don't think all of these little things ended up were the sole reason that Indiana ended up losing, but you can't make all of these mistakes against a team like Penn State on the road. So all of these start to add up. So the Penn State scores again. It's 27-14. This was right after that that weird set of downs, and you can't really fault the defense for only letting Penn State went 40 yards. That was it, and they scored. It was 28 seconds. It was 2 plays. 27-14. All of the momentum now on Penn State. Is Indiana even going to be able to sniff coming back into this game? Well, next the entire next drive, 14 plays, 7-minute drive, which is not, Indiana doesn't put together 7, 8, 9-minute drives all the time. So this was a great drive, a great comeback drive that they were. It's like, hey, we're not out of this game. We're not gonna we're not gonna lay down like this. The recent Indiana teams have gone. And this is where the mistake comes at the end. The Indiana's driving down the field, 7+ minute drive. You get to, what was it, like a short run? Yep, short run on 1st and goal, short run on 2nd and goal, not getting anywhere, offensive line not opening up any holes. Okay, 3rd and semi-long, 3rd and goal at semi-long. You set up the play really well. You had receivers run routes very well, and then Donovan Hill's open right in the end zone. Peyton Ramsey, great pass right on the hands, drops it. And again, all of these plays didn't necessarily add up to Indiana losing because they had a lot of time left. Indiana still ended up getting 3 points out of it, but that's the difference between, it was after the field goal, it was 27-17. That's the difference between 27-21. Which then later in the game, if Indiana scored a touchdown after that, then it's 28-27. Indiana's on top. So no matter what Penn State does next, they score that touchdown. Even if they have that 9-minute touchdown by the end of the game, it's still 34-28, and all Indiana has to do in all of those scenarios is score once instead of trying to go, oh, I got to go, score, kick an onside kick, go, score, and then keep rinse, rather repeat. So, Andrew, first of all, let me just get your overall view of the second half, since there were a bunch of different mistakes in there, starting with the muffed punt going into the drop pass with Donnie Hale. Do you think Indiana, despite all of their because their second half actually was, except for that muffed punt, they had field goal, touchdown, field goal to keep going. Do you think Indiana's mistakes cost them too much, or did you like a lot of what you saw in the second half from the Hoosiers?
I thought it ended up mistakes costing, but there were some bright spots. Mistakes-wise, the whole fake punt thing, Tom Allen said that wasn't supposed to happen. But then I'm not a coach, obviously, but I would have, if you're going to at least try to get them to jump off sides, just put your basic offense out there. That you have experienced quarterback, you have an experienced center, offensive line. So the mistakes there have a less chance of happening. So that's what I would have done, but I don't get paid $100,000 to coach football. So, whatever. I'm a college student. So, but the Donovan Hill drop was huge. I was right in front of him when he dropped it.
Oh.
I was just shocked by all means. He's had a decent season, and to see him drop that pass was kind of unbelievable. And drop passes have hurt IU a couple of times this season, and it hurt them again against Penn State. But continuing in the second half, they did respond, something a lot of IU teams in the past have not done against bigger teams. My freshman year against Ohio State, they were at home when game day was there. They had a close game throughout the half, and then the third quarter opened up. So it was nice to see them finally get a hard-fought, not necessarily a loss, but it was good to see them finish through the end.
Yeah. They didn't finish the game, right? They didn't win the game, but they played hard for 60 minutes, which is something that Coach Allen preaches nonstop in practice and the press conferences, on Twitter, like everywhere. We played hard for 60 minutes, and they went into Penn State and played hard for 60 minutes, and that's something they can be proud of. However, they didn't get the result, so we can't be too proud, but there's growing signs for this program for sure.
You can talk about the moral victories, and how that people don't really like moral victories, but at some point with this Hoosier football team that's trying to grow into a team that can consistently play every year against everyone, at some point there's going to have to be a moral victory just for you to bridge a lot of those gaps going up, and taking it to Penn State literally all the way down to where you've got a minute and a half left, and you've got to score twice, and they actually end up going all the way down the field. They probably should have scored a touchdown if they didn't mismanage the clock a little bit. And I think the thing that ended up ultimately killing them was just the amount of plays and the amount of time that Penn State was able to do on their final drive. It was a 9-minute drive, 18 plays that they ran in a 75-yard drive all the way down to the end zone for a touchdown. And that part's just killer when the defense is on the field for 9 minutes at the end of the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Indiana's defense has a lot more depth than they have the past couple of years, which is why Indiana hasn't been able to close out games against Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State, Penn State. This was not the reason. It was just because they couldn't get off the field against one drive, which left Indiana with no time left. And the botched weird timeouts that Tom Allen had, debatable timeouts, which we don't have to necessarily go into. But in all, I think a moral victory is at least something small to say. Like you said, they ended up coming away with a loss, but it was still something that most people from what I've seen, most fans I've seen are proud of the way Indiana played.
Absolutely. I think, you take one or two replays and one or two pass drops this year, and we're 9-1.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can go back to the Michigan State game and go, this person doesn't drop the pass here, and one call goes our way. Maybe like our penalty that was kind of 50-50 isn't called on us. And like, who knows? Like, we win that game in East Lansing, and then you go in this game and go, if we don't, mess up the fake punt, Watt doesn't get injured, and / doesn't muff the punt. Like both of both those things don't happen. Like, what happens in this game? And it's, as painful as to talk about it, we should talk about it, because this program is that close to being 9-1, going, oh, Rose Bowl is very much a possibility here, right? Like,
yeah,
like this is the thing. So and Penn State's a top 10 team. This is no team. This is like not a Michigan State team that's now, what are they, 5-4, 4-5, whatever they are, what their record is. I think they're 4-5. Like, this is a top 10 Penn State team that was receiving votes in the top 4 of the college football playoff before they went and had a very tough loss to Minnesota on the road. Like, we're playing with the big boys now, and we're playing with them. So, props to this team. I would like to see our running attack probably play a little bit better, but then again, Penn State is the number 1 rushing defense in the country. So, you got to take what they're going to give you, right? But
50 yards from Stevie Scott's pretty good. But yeah, Michigan State
on 17 carries, those.
Yeah. Michigan State's 4-6 now, though. But let's move on so we can talk about a few other things, since this is a yet another busy podcast that happens when basketball and football overlap with our next topic. Since Nathan's not here about who won the week, I'll take this over, since I was there at the specific thing I'd like to talk about. So, of course, on Sunday, if you didn't hear, the men's soccer team was playing in College Park for the Big Ten Tournament Championship. They were a rematch against Michigan. Last year, they played Michigan for the tournament champion, and they won 3-0. This year, after Indiana had lost 10 of 11 starters, 8 of those 10 players, they lost 11 players overall from last season. 8 of those 11 players are now playing at the next level. So that's the amount of talent that Indiana lost from last year, losing 10 of 11 starters. 8 of those players are now playing professionally. That's incredible. But then it just goes to show the amount of recruiting, the amount of coaching that Todd Yeagley does with this men's soccer team is just incredible, that they find themselves back into the Big Ten Tournament Championship, winning back-to-back Big Ten regular seasons. This is also the 10th time overall that the men's soccer team won both the regular season and the Big Ten tournament in the same year. This is their 14th overall Big Ten tournament champion. The match on Sunday went down all the way to the wire. Not one team could score all the way up until penalties. It was a very stressful situation. So I was on site. I was able to, living close to Maryland, I was able to drive over. It was a really cool atmosphere. And I don't mean that in terms of fans. It was just the amount of access that I was able to have. I could be right next to the players the whole time. I could get the amount of pictures that I got was really cool. There was really no fans were there. It was just family. Nevertheless, it was still a cool game because it was 0-0, and the amount of attacks that both teams had. It wasn't just Indiana dominating and they couldn't end up finding the back of the net. It was really Michigan that was dominating that couldn't find the back of the net all the way to penalties. Once it got to penalties, it was really cool because you just saw the amount of emotion that was coming on both teams and just how close they were getting with especially our freshman goalie was able to get a bunch of saves, and most of Indiana's they made 4 of their 5 penalty shots, and Indiana was able to come away with it. And I could rush on the field with them so I could get pictures. And it was just really cool to see the sheer emotion that they had with all the work that they put in this year, the amount of talent they lost, and the goals that they were still able to achieve. And it was just huge shout out to them, not just for the number of times that they've won the regular season and the tournament and everything, but just especially for this team, losing that many players and being able to come out, battle against a team that is Michigan's better than they were last year soccer-wise in a lot of cases, because they had a lot of talent returning for this Michigan soccer team, coming out, winning in penalties at the very last second, being able to celebrate that with them and their friends and their families on a cold day, which is not the temperature that they play most of the season with. It was just really cool to see. And that's definitely, I think, the team who won the week the most out of this past week. And they are now a 5 seed in the tournament as of yesterday. And again, for men's soccer, it's not a 4, there are 4 teams as a 1 seed, 4 teams as a 2, et cetera, et cetera. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way down to, I think, 32. Every one team gets 1 spot. So they're the number 5 seed, which means they're the 5th overall team that the committee thinks. So Matt, I think you want to jump in here on this.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing considering 10 out of 11 starters are being replaced on this squad. I mean, they're so young. Like I can draw parallels to what we're about to talk about, which is basketball. Like look at Kentucky. Kentucky struggling. I gotta fit this in because I gotta take a shot at Kentucky. But look at Kentucky struggling with Evansville, right? Like they're replacing starters.
They lost to Evansville.
Yeah, and they almost lost to Utah Valley State.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but look how they're struggling, and they're replacing a lot of their minutes with freshmen. And then you look at this IU soccer team, and 10 out of 11 starters. That's quick math. That's like 92% of the starting minutes. So that's nuts to me, and that's just props to Jerry Yeagley and our coach Yeagley and the staff there at the soccer program, and just getting the guys ready to play and playing championship soccer.
Yep, I got a picture with Coach Yeagley actually after the game. It was really cool. But let's move on to the later on Saturday evening. It was nice to have football and basketball on the same day. It was just a lot of watching. I know Andrew didn't get to watch as much as he might have wanted to because he was going to start finishing up HQ duties, getting ready to go from Penn State all the way back to IU, make that long trek with Nathan. But the Hoosiers ended up beating Troy 100-62. Now, again, they were playing Troy, who is now they are still winless on the season. But I think that the best part was just the way Indiana played. They were able to keep they played their best basketball in the season. So Andrew, even though you didn't get to watch it, what was the kind of chatter that you were hearing, maybe seeing on Twitter, hearing from us, and how do you feel, even if you didn't get to watch most of the game, how do you feel Indiana played, and how does that kind of go into, maybe since we're playing Princeton, a much better team than the past, how do you think that's going to help Indiana moving forward?
Well, first things first, I noticed this back at the hotel, Archie Miller cracked a smile at the end of the game. That was really interesting to see that, considering the competitive nature of Archie. I will go with that one there.
In-game at least. In-game.
Yes, in-game, yes. The game itself, what I watched some highlights from what I saw, it sounds like a complete all-around effort. Heard it's their best game of the season they played so far. Yep. They were sound on the defense and offensive floor. And I really want to see if that can translate into the game against Princeton as well. Not all the players, Justin Smith, Jackson Davis, they all don't have to score the amount of points that they did. It just has to come overall from a team, which basketball is team sport. You have 5 players out on the court. It doesn't have to be from the same people every night. But can this team keep this momentum going as November rolls around and we get into December?
Mm-hmm. Matt, what were your thoughts on the 48-point victory for the Hoosiers, 38-point victory?
Yeah, I was sitting in the American Airlines Arena within my lap watching. So that's what I was doing. I was watching 2 basketball games at once, watching the Heat and then watching my Hoosiers. But I thought it was a really good effort from the team. In fact, I a little unheralded moment, but I really liked the 17 minutes Deron Davis gave. Even though he was 0-4 from the floor, Like the fact that he got out there and was playing for 17 minutes in this game, got 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals. Like that's a good effort for a guy who's coming back and trying to get into full game shape. And we were missing Devontae, and we weren't missing Devontae Green. We had Devontae Green back. We were missing Rob Finney this game. And it's like they're playing phone tag with each other. Like here, you go in and play this game. I'll sit out the next game. Hopefully we'll have him back for Princeton, and then I will be able to really fully judge this team and see what the lineups are going to look like and what rotations are going to look like when everybody's back healthy. Thank God. It's weird talking about a healthy basketball team, but we shot it really well as well. Like 39% from 3, like 70% from the line. What is this team? This is night and day from what we had last year. Hit 9 threes in the game. And if you take out Devontae Green's 1 of 6 and Jerome Hunter's 0 of 3, like we're shooting close to 50% from the 3-point line. And that's amazing. Like Al Durham has been on fire since the start of the season. He looks like a much improved shooter. Justin Smith was 2 of 2 and had a great game. 8 of 9 for the field, 22 minutes, 22 points in 22 minutes, by the way. And had 5 rebounds, 2 assists, and 3 steals himself. Like, as you said, Andrew, it's an all-around performance. Like, I thought it was our best defensive performance of the year. Offense, we had 58 points in the first half. I don't think you can ask much more to score 58 points in the first half. Like, there's going to be some games this year where we're going to be playing like Wisconsin, where we're going to be lucky to hit 58 points in a ugly defensive basketball game. And this is a Troy Trojans team that came into the game shooting 40% from 3. We held them to 20%, like 5 of 25 from 3. Like it's okay. If we held them to 40%, they shoot, or like 20%, they shoot only 10 threes. It's like, well, okay, they didn't shoot threes this game, like whatever. But like they shot 25, which is a good amount, and we were contesting them. I remember vividly in the second half a really good closeout from Demezy Anderson, who also had a great game, and I'll pass it off to you to talk about that, Noah. But overall, I'm really impressed with how much this team has grown in the first 3 games, and I can't wait to see all of our guards back because this team's gonna be fun to watch.
Yeah, you mentioned the 3-point shooting. If you take away both all of Devontae and Jerome shots, the team shot 57% from 3, which, by the way, the 2 things in common with Jerome and Devontae is that they have been injured recently, more especially Jerome, who hasn't been in game shape in over a year. But then Devontae, the first thing, I'll talk about him for a second, since this is the first time we've seen Devontae all season, which is earlier, by the way. People were not expecting Devontae to be playing at Troy, let alone maybe even Princeton. They thought a couple weeks maybe after Thanksgiving. But it was good to see him, I think, a few reasons. The first, he definitely didn't look good, but I think it was just rust. He was looking rusty, the way his shot was, the way he was moving, and I think it was, overall, I think the best thing from him this game was just that he played 20 minutes. He was able to, even in the blowout, coach was able to keep Devontae out there, and he could just get game minutes, start to see what he can do, and it ended up paying off too. I think the 1 3 that he ended up making at the very end of the game after going 0 for whatever was really good for him, because that's something that, I hit a shot, I'm gonna be that's what it feels like after, because remember, he hasn't been able to get any game minutes since last March. So that's the first time he's been able to score a 3. He's getting things back under his belt. I think he's going to be able to have a couple tune-up games. Louisiana Tech will be a tough matchup, but he gets some more minutes against Princeton, and then we get to start seeing some more of our, like you said, Matt, the guards coming back into play. Going down the list a little bit with, I'll just go position group by position group kind of. I liked a lot of what I saw from, like you said, the forwards and the centers. Joey Brunk, Deron Davis, I think, like we talked about last week, they're finding their own roles. I think I like a lot of what I see. Joey's going to be really efficient. Deron, I liked when you have healthy Deron, the kind of stuff that he does is just incredible, especially the passing that he does down low. And Joey this game as well. Both of them together had 6 assists, which is something you really need when you got 2 really big guys. You maybe pass it down to Deron, 3 people collapse, kick it out, open 3, make it, and that's kind of what we started to see.
Troy was playing a zone. Am I right?
I don't remember specific at points.
Yeah, I think they were playing zone because I remember us talking about our zone offense was great. But yeah, you're going to get that with the big men in the zone offense because they're going to be sitting in the middle of that zone and passing around and kicking out to shooters. But like props to our guys because they hit shots, and this is not something that we did last year. We would have struggled against the zone defense last year because we weren't able to make shots over the zone.
Yep. But let's talk a little bit about, like you said, Justin Smith. And I think his stats kind of speak for itself. 20, like you said, 22 points in 22 minutes. He was 8 for 9 from the field, 2 for 2 from threes, 4 for 4 from the free throw line. I'll say that again. He missed one shot total from either a 2, a 3, or free throw line. If you would have said last year that Justin would score over 20 points and miss only one shot, I think we would have all been crazy, including taking 2 threes and making both of them.
No, I just thought we were playing Michigan State.
Yeah, exactly. And he had 5 total rebounds, good. 2 assists, great. 3 steals, awesome. A block, couple turnovers. Honestly, if I'll take 2 turnovers over the amount of stuff that he gave, and he didn't foul as much. So love the line from Justin that speaks for itself.
I'll take a turnover for every 3 he makes.
Yeah,
I'll take that.
Not bad.
Then sounds good.
Then you get into the guy that I think everyone had Justin Smith. You look at the box score, great, but I think the player of the game was more Trace Jackson Davis, a guy that this podcast has been really high on, not just normal. Oh, he's a good 4-star recruit coming in. We have been really high on Trace, and now people are seeing the kind of impact that he can have, not just down the road, but immediately. 25 minutes, 17 points. That's not the storyline. He got 14 rebounds. His free throw is actually worse than normal, but he's a guy that's getting to the line almost 10 times a game, which is awesome, and he's usually making most of them. Another efficient player, 6 for 6 from the field as well. A couple steals, only 1 block this game, which is actually down from his normal self. But
go Big Ten Freshman of the Week.
He kind of reminds me, and definitely doesn't play the same style, but he kind of reminds me a lot of what Thomas Bryant when he first came in. What he's going to give is going to be a lot of rebounds, a lot of efficient scoring. His free throws are going to be better than Thomas, I think. I hope at least. And he's going to get a couple more blocks than Thomas. So again, not the same style of play, but the kind of stuff that he's going to give you is. And when Thomas came in, he gave a lot of energy, but the amount of stuff you could see the immediate impact that he gave, and I think Trace is going to be someone like that. And they sort of kind of have similar body types anyway. But as I keep talking as well. The guard play, I think, was pretty good. I really like what I'm seeing Al consistently. I think that's the big key. It's we know he could do it, but is he going to be able to do it most games? And the amount of points he's scored already is just awesome. And
he's going to be on the floor a lot this year. I think in the first 3 games, he has had the most minutes out of everybody in the first 3 games.
Yep.
Like, you go game 1, game 2, game 3, game 4, I think he had as well. So, like, he's going to be probably starting and then also coming off, like, not even just coming off the bench, but like playing with the second unit and being that backup point guard. So we're going to be seeing a lot of Al this year. And this coaching staff has a lot of belief in him, as you can tell through the first couple games, just like let it fly. And he's been sinking shots, which is, if he can continue at this pace, like, oh my God, all Big Ten honors is on the horizon for him.
Yep, exactly. So, his 3-point percentage. I'm going to keep going. Like you said, Matt, I think we're going to have to wait and see for the guards what their specific role is going to be after everyone's healthy, but it's going to be really cool to see when you have all of these guards contributing when they're on the floor. Imagine what they can do when they're able to find roles with each other. And even you can add, Demezy Anderson, who's been able to, man, if he's a guy that can come in, play for 10, 15, even maybe 20 minutes, depending on the game, and he's going to make some shots, at least as of what he's shown us right now. No matter how weird his shot looks, he can come in and score, and he's going to be one of those players for Indiana that you're like, remember, like last year against Northwestern, where you're like, who is this guy? How many points has he scored all season? And now he's scoring 20 against Indiana. This is a guy that's going to be able to do that for Indiana this time, I think. And then the other person that I have not left out, I think, is a dark horse for this entire team is Race Thompson. I think we're going to see a lot of Trace and Race on the floor because he's a guy that I think is going to.
They look so good together.
Joey's minutes went down, Duran's went up, but I think really the main 4/5, if you want to even put a position to it, that you're going to see a lot of the time, at least as of now, is going to be Trace and Race, and the way that they play together is just really cool to see. And again, this is Race that has not had a lot of experience, game minutes experience under his belt. So Race is definitely a guy to keep seeing.
I got a question for you guys. In the game, we had I can do it on my hands. 10 players have minutes in double figures, right? Double digit minutes. And then we have Rob Finney coming back. That's 11 players, right? Hypothetically, that we're having playing double digit minutes. Holy crap, that's hard to say. Out of those 11 players, who's the guy that gets kicked out, right? Like, because there's no way we're going to be running with 11-man rotation. Like, we all know Archie Miller doesn't like to do that. He likes to cut it down to 9. But he's going to have to probably run with 10 this year because we're that deep. So who's that 11th guy that gets knocked out from what you've seen in the first, 4 games?
Why don't you kick it off, Andrew?
Okay.
Yeah, why don't you kick it off?
Matt, that was a really, really tough question. You got me going here. It depends on what Archie wants on the floor. If he wants guys who can do offense and defense, Demezy's probably going to have to one you have to give less minutes to. If he can consistently come off the bench and shoot and be a part of the offense, it'd be great. But right now, he probably have to be my pick. And it all depends on if Devontae comes back fully healthy and the team gets 100%. That's all really what this season's come down to. Can IU get a good season in with their 100%?
Yeah. And I think, Matt, that question goes for just assuming that everyone's going to be healthy. So I'm going to say, first, I'm going to say, and we talked about this, I think 2 weeks ago on the podcast, how we really like how Archie's able to adapt to his own situation where, again, he only likes to play 7 or 8 guys maximum on the floor for what his typical game strategy is. But I think this year he's going to play, and I honestly could see most games, if everyone's healthy, every single player getting at least close to double-digit minutes, and it's just going to be who gets more minutes which game, depending on the opponent that you're playing and then how well you're playing. Like if Justin's going to give us a game where he's going to score 22 and 22, he's going to be on the court the whole time. Or if he has a game where he's going to go back to maybe bad Justin, he's kind of taken over that term, then we're not going to see him as much. So I think it's really going to be, if you're playing well, you're going to get on the court. And I think I'd have to, if you really had to say, no, you can only pick 10 people out of those 11 people, I would have to agree with Andrew. It depends on the situation, but I could see Demezy, his minutes going down a lot more. And then depending on the guard situation, I can also see Armand's minutes going down as well. He's got some good defensive stuff. Yeah, sorry. He's got some good defensive stuff, but and he's not doing poorly. It's just that there's other players that are outperforming him right now. And this is nothing against him. I honestly mean that. It's more of just that there are players that are not freshmen that are able to find their roles a little more just because they've been in Archie Miller's system a little longer.
Yeah, but I think he's going to have a bigger role than we thought going into the season.
Yes, 100%. I agree with that.
So good job, Armand. And then, I mean, both of our freshmen, Armand and Trace, have been a joy to watch in the first 4 games. I'm really excited to see the next 4 games against a little bit tougher opponents to kind of see, can they keep up this level of play? Because if they do, watch out, Big Ten, because get some really good freshmen in our hands.
Speaking of a team that everyone had no idea how the offense was going to come after they are averaging 93.5 points per game in their first 4 opponents.
Yes.
Regardless of the opponent, that's a lot better than what people were expecting the offense to be this year.
A lot better than last year.
Exactly. Let's move on to Matt, our social media shout out. So give us your social media post of the week this week for Indiana sports.
Sure. So if you head on over to Twitter to Indiana Women's Basketball, or IUWBB on Twitter, they are ranked number 18 in the country. It's the highest ranking in the history of the program.
Say that again.
Props. Number 18 in the country, highest ranking in the history of the program.
Say that again.
Number 18 in the country, highest rank. I can't even say it.
Highest ranking in their program history.
Yes. Wait, you can take that as you will, being number 18 in the country. But look, like this program is on the rise. Terry Morin loves her players. I was with them out in Oregon last year and had a blast. And I'm sure they're going to be going back to the NCAA tournament this year. But like they've got it going in Bloomington. Allie Petborg is a joy to watch. The point guard position, Jalen Penn. I can go down the roster, but this is a loaded IU women's basketball team. So if you're in Bloomington, go ahead and go out to a game. They're a lot of fun. They're free for students. Mm-hmm. Go see them. They deserve your support and love. So shout out to the women's basketball program.
No, I think that's Indiana women's basketball is typically usually like Indiana football, usually not very high up there, and especially in women's basketball land, the top 25 usually stays the top 25, and there's a huge drop-off after that. So, no, I think number 18 in the country is still an incredible thing, especially for Terry Morin in her young tenure at Indiana, too, nevertheless. So,
yeah, hopefully we don't have to play Oregon this year because they just beat Team USA.
Yeah, I know. We're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about potentially the biggest game for Indiana football this year. I think the biggest game that fans thought that the biggest game that Indiana had the best chance of winning, and it's at home against now. I forgot to check after was it number 11 Michigan? I wrote it all down, and then the college football rankings came out recently. Check that for me. It's number 12 in the AP and the coaches
number
poll.
13
in the college football playoffs. 12/13 this Saturday. The 23rd, 3:30 p.m. on ESPN. It's senior night, by the way, senior day, I guess. ESPN Matchup Predictor has Indiana's chances at 23%. Compared to Penn State, they were at a 10%. The line is getting farther and farther towards disrespectful to Indiana, which we will get to disrespect later. But right now, the line is still creeping even more towards Michigan's favor. It started at 7 in Michigan's favor. Right now, currently, it's 9 in Michigan's favor. The over-under is at 53 at the time of recording this podcast. A couple of their notable games this year, their notable wins and losses. And keep in mind the home and away that I'm about to give. So their notable wins: home, number 14 against number 14 Iowa. This is at the time of playing. Home against number 8 Notre Dame. They did win that Notre Dame game 45-14. They smacked them. And then win home against Michigan State 44-10. Their notable losses. Their only 2 losses. They lost at number 13 Wisconsin. They lost by 20 points. Then that was back in September. Lost at number 7 Penn State 4 weeks ago. Close game, 28-21. If you're following along with the home, exactly. There you go. At Penn State, nevertheless. So if you're following along with those home and away scores, Michigan has won their big games at home and lost all of their games on the road. Now, those road losses were against top 10/top 15 teams, but one at home, loss on the road. Where is Michigan going? They are going on the road this weekend. S&P Plus ratings. Indiana is now at 20. They dropped 1 spot after this weekend. Their offense up to 13th. Defense up to 34th. Special teams. I don't know if this fumble had anything to do with it. They dropped 4 spots to number 13. Going over to Michigan, they're 10th overall in S&P Plus. Their offense is at 34. Their offense is much farther down compared to Indiana's, but their defense is completely the other way. They're at 5. And their special teams, 100% the opposite way at 49. Before I get into some specifics about their offense and defense, I'm going to give Andrew a chance first to talk about what he sees against this Michigan Wolverine opponent coming up this Saturday for Indiana, potentially to get their eighth, let me say that again, to get their 8th victory on the season.
Yeah, real fast. Your audio kind of cut out in my my earphones. What did you say the spread was?
Right now,
10.
Michigan.
It's up to 10. Yeah,
it's up to 10 now.
Yeah,
10 it was at 9
ESPN.
last. God, that means it's changed literally within 30 minutes of us starting the podcast.
Over under 52.5. So who knows what this game is going to hold. But Michigan itself always been a historic program, one of the tops of the Big Ten and the country year after year. Big thing with this team is obviously their defense. They're holding teams to 16.4 points per game and allow 161 yards. Rushing yards, they shut it down about 106 yards, and passing is 154. So it's going to be tough for Indiana. I mean, it's home. It's senior day. There's going to be a lot riding on this game for the Hoosiers, trying to improve their season as well as get some momentum for the program heading into Purdue and then the bowl game. But for Michigan itself, they're very talented on the defensive front. Offense, averaging 33 points a game. So depending on how Indiana plays, this game's going to be either high scoring or Indiana's going to have a tough time against this defense. And the Hoosiers have not always played up to the top teams very well throughout 4 quarters, as we showed against Penn State. So that's going to be a key if the Hoosiers can finish for 4 quarters. I predicted a 33-24 Michigan win. Depending on Wap's condition, if he's back this week at all, I don't know what the situation on that is. That can be a key factor. They're probably going to overcome a slow start, but Michigan's probably going to pull away in the 4th quarter. That's what I'm going with. That's what probably a lot of people are going to think. But this Indiana team could surprise us. And Michigan, 2 years ago, here for homecoming, it came down to overtime and a field goal by, I believe, Griffin Oakes was the kicker, I think, back then. Mm-hmm. He kicked a field goal homecoming, and then overtime defense kind of gave up, and it was a heartbreaker. So this has a lot riding. You said it's probably the biggest matchup on the season, obviously, because it's the next game. So that's probably what's riding on this game right now.
Yep. Matt, why don't you talk about what you see with Michigan and all back cleanup?
Yeah, I mean, Shea Patterson is a quarterback. He is explosive, but not with his arm. It's with his legs. He's going to get most of his big plays come through the ground. He's not going to throw the ball all over the yard on Indiana. In fact, he's not a very accurate quarterback either, in my opinion.
Well, here, let me dive into that real quick since you're going to talk about Shea Patterson. And so he's got, let me pull up his complete stats. He's got, let me do the game log. He doesn't have very many rushing attempts or rushing yards, but you talked about his accuracy. Sorry, I'm trying to do 2 things at once. He's trying to talk about his accuracy, and it is at 59.1%. So if you think about that compared to Peyton Ramsey, and we're going to just compare him instead of Penix. He's got Ramsey throws 72.7%, so 59 versus basically 73. So you're right, he's not very accurate on the ground. He has only let me see, he only has 157 total yards out of 10 games.
That's fair, but like, he gets yards and he scrambles in very important situations. He's kind of like how Brian Lorkey was against us, right? Like, he'll pick up a first down when needed, when he needs to in the clutch. And that's something that this defense struggles against.
Like Clifford did last week against.
Yeah. So
I apologize. I even amend that. It's only 81 yards on the entire season for 69 attempts.
Right, but now, he is.
You do have to average some of those. They do count sacks sometimes as a run, but I think your point is more that he can sometimes get that first down when needed in clutch situations.
Yes, yeah. When I meant big plays on the ground, I didn't mean he's running like Lamar Jackson for like 40 yards, like in a pop. That's not happening. Okay, but he is going to get really clutch first downs for Michigan with his legs. And that is something that we need to watch out for sure. I do often see them whenever I've watched Michigan, I do often see them at the goal line. They like to go with the quarterback sneak a lot. So that might also be another thing where he's just like, when they get down the goal line, they run him 3 times for 1 yard. And that kind of, brings up his average or brings out the average a little bit. But look, he's at 53% completion percentage away from home. So Angie said what? He's 59 for the season. 59 for the season. He's 53 away. So that goes down when he's away from home.
Nice.
And the way our defense played last week, I think Clifford only completed 11 of 27 against our passing defense, and that was away from home. Like, I see Shea Patterson having a hard time throwing against this defense, and it's going to be up to our linebackers in order. Can they plug the gaps? Can they plug the gaps and keep the big plays on the running game from happening? Because if that happens, this is going to be Indiana's game to win. Like, if our defense can hold, like, I believe in our offense enough to get enough points to win this game. Like, Kalen DeBoer has now shown me in 10 games, like, he has a track record now. Like, this team is going to put up points. If our defense can keep them off the scoreboard, this is our game to win.
Yep. I'll just add a couple things onto what Andrew and Matt said. First, before I do that, I will be on the Blue Wire Michigan State podcast for an Indiana preview this coming week. So we'll send that out so you can listen to some of the Indiana side on a Michigan podcast, which will actually be pretty cool. That'll be cool to get on and hear a Michigan side of everything and how they feel about this Michigan team as well. So like you talked about Shea Patterson, I'll kind of compare him to Peyton Ramsey. Right now, Shea on the in the air averages 216 yards per game, Peyton 240. Completion percentage, like I said, 73 for Peyton, 59 for Shea. Then, and remember, Peyton Ramsey has only played roughly about 7 games. I think I tried to add all the bits and pieces together. So about 7 games versus 10 games for Shea. Ramsey has 10 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. Shea 16 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. So sort of pretty comparable for interceptions to touchdowns. But the biggest stat that I do want to give Ramsey a shout out for, Shea has a 68.6 QBR, which is 43rd in the nation. Not too bad compared to the amount of quarterbacks that are out there, top 50. But you go down to Peyton Ramsey, who a few weeks ago we talked about he was in like the 30s or something like that. He's now up to a 79.8 QBR, which is 12th in the nation. Penix is just a 80.2, something like that, which is 10th in the nation. Indiana has 2 of the top 12 quarterbacks in QBR in the entire nation, which is awesome.
I've never heard those words before in my entire life.
Exactly, yeah, because they haven't existed.
Our passing offense is in rhythm.
Yep. Then you've got their running back. You've got Zach Charbonnet. I think I said that right. 124 attempts, 589 yards, 11 total touchdowns. So he gets a bunch of touchdowns. But compared to Stevie Scott, 165 for 791 total yards, 9 touchdowns. So sort of comparable if you want to put numbers. Stevie will get more yards, so Zach doesn't get too many yards per clip. It's pretty decent. He's going to be Michigan's their first. If they can get the run game going, that's what they prefer. Then you've got Hassan Haskins, who will also you'll see a bunch of times. He's got 78 attempts for 439 yards, so he can run a little faster or a little farther, I mean. Wide receiver, their main guy, by a decent margin, Ronnie Bell, 36 catches for 610 total yards, but he doesn't score. He literally has 0 touchdowns on the season. He has the most receptions and the most yards, but 0 touchdowns. Comparing that, I'll even take out WAP, and I'll go to our second receiver for the team, which is Ty, 38 receptions, 502 yards, 3 touchdowns. So Ronnie Bell right now is putting up numbers close to Ty Freifogel. So if you go to receiver battle, especially if WAP is going to be in the game, I really like Indiana's receivers versus Michigan's, but I don't think WAP's going to be able to go. If I were to bet, I think they're going to hold WAP out. That was a hard hit to come back in 1 week.
Yeah, as of Monday, Tom Allen really didn't have an answer for that yet.
He's not going to either.
Yeah, there's a process they're going through throughout the week. So
yeah,
as soon as I know, I'll let the channel know for Slack. So
yeah, and with the way Penix stuff has had this season, I would expect nothing until we see, is he in warm up gear or not on Saturday?
Yes.
But
is he throwing to the main wide receivers or not? It's like a playback of our quarterback controversy.
All right, I'll go quickly since we're pressed for time. Quickly, the other receivers you'll see, Nico Collins will also get a bunch. He's got 4 touchdowns, tied for the most with Donovan Peoples-Jones, also has 4 touchdowns. You'll see a little bit of Tariq Black, their tight end. Nick Eurobanks has got 3 touchdowns. You'll see him a little bit, but they're not like their receivers aren't going to make or break this team. It's going to be how much Michigan can run the ball versus making Shea throw it. Because if you can make Shea throw it, then Indiana's going to be in a decent spot to win. Going over the defensive side, their defense is only allowed 16.4 points per game. Remember, in Michigan's defense, it's Michigan defense, so it speaks for itself basically. Only averaged 262 yards per game, 155 pass, 107 rush. they do get about 3 sacks per game. So an offensive line that can be streaky. Expect possibly to see some sacks coming from the Michigan defensive line. They get a decent amount of turnovers. They've got 8 interceptions, 9 fumble recoveries on the season. So it's just about under 2 turnovers per game, which is pretty good.
That's what happens when you get pressure on the quarterback.
Exactly. Yep. Then you've got Khaleke Hudson is their best, I think, maybe overall player-ish. He's a linebacker, 83 tackles, only 2 sacks and 3 pass deflections, so he's going to be a guy that's stuffing the run. But then you've got another guy, Josh Uche, I think. He's got 7.5. I don't know. 7.5 sacks on the season as a linebacker. So you've got a guy rushing on the edge as well, with 2 guys on the defensive line, Aiden Hutchinson and Kwity Paye. Aiden has 3.5 sacks and Paye has 5.5 sacks. But Aiden Hutchinson, 3.5 sacks, 5 pass deflections. So Aiden's going to get his arm. He's a big boy, going to get his arms up there. So that's kind of what you see on the defense. It's going to be, is the Indiana offense going to move on the Michigan defense, which you can talk about Penn State and Michigan's defense being sort of kind of pretty similar, and Indiana's seen a pretty good defense already with Michigan State, and they've moved the ball down the field most of the time. Indiana did not score 30 points against Penn State, but I think it could be pretty close depending on how they're able to do it at home. Last thing I want to mention, and it is worth mentioning this late into the podcast, special teams, they have had kicking issues. Last year, they had Quinn Nordin missed a bunch of field goals, so Jake Moody took over at the beginning of this year. They started. He's only 6 for 9 on field goals. Then they have gone back to Quinn as of now. He's 4 of 7 from field goals on the season. Extra points aren't a problem, 100% both of them. But if it comes down to kicking, Indiana has definitely, knock on wood, a much better kicker going into this matchup. So Andrew gave us his prediction, predicting, I think he gave us a specific score. Matt, do you predict Indiana to come away with it when it's all said and done, or are you going to be like Andrew where Michigan's going to be able to pull away at the very end?
This was my midseason flip. I flipped it from Penn State to Michigan. I do think this game is winnable. In fact, I think it's senior night, and you know what? I'm going to believe it's a miracle that WAP is back for senior night and everything goes nice and rosy. And look, 31-28, IU, like you said, knock on wood, kicking, game-winning field goal, walk it off, tear down the goalposts in Bloomington, run around on the field, do what you got to do. Packed house. It's going to be great.
I should have gone last because I'm going to break the tie in Andrew's favor. It's the only the believe it till I see it. I definitely think and will obviously be rooting for Indiana to pull it out, and I definitely do think they can do it. Definitely Michigan compared to Penn State, if anything, and if they play like they did against Penn State minus a couple extra things, Indiana can come away with this victory, but believe it till I see it, 31-21 Michigan. WAP's going to be out, and Michigan's just going to pull away at the last second. It's going to be closer than a 2-score game, but that is how I'm going to wrap it up. So hopefully next week.
Let's send Harbaugh back to the NFL.
Let's send Harbaugh back to the NFL, or maybe back to nothing. But that's going to wrap it up for our 116th show of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you to that live audience for coming out and participating in the chat. We really appreciate your support. We will be back next Monday for another edition of the Hoosier Sound Off. Of course, news and updates come through Twitter, so subscribe so you don't miss anything out. Most importantly, we grow this podcast by leaving a review. So leave us a review so we can reach more passionate IU fans such as yourself. But as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we'll see you next time.